If you're typing best shock collar for dogs into Google, I need to stop you right there and tell you something the marketing doesn't mention. Shock collars fail most pet parents, not because the technology is bad, but because the timing, the relationship cost, and the risk of getting it wrong are just too high for everyday training. There are actually two other types of training collars that work better for most situations, and almost nobody's comparing them honestly. I'm Jasmine Caldwell, a professional pet groomer who spent nearly a decade handling dogs of every temperament you can imagine, and I live with 4 rescues who've taught me more about what actually works than any certification ever could.
You're listening to Total Pet Parent Podcast. Quick heads up, the voice you're hearing is AI generated, but everything else, the research, the experience, the actual writing, that's all me, Jasmine Caldwell. And it's all human. I just wanted to be upfront about that. If you've been listening for a while, thank you. Seriously, it's good to have you back. If you're new here, welcome. We release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we cover the real stuff that comes up when you're actually living with dogs, not just the Instagram version. Today, we're comparing 3 types of training collars, and I'm going to tell you which ones actually work and which ones are more risk than reward. I'm going to give you the reality from someone who's worked hands-on with anxious, reactive, and fearful dogs for years. Shock collars aren't usually the best choice for most pet parents, and there are more effective, relationship-building alternatives in vibration and spray collars that actually work without the risks. I've spent years at the grooming table watching how dogs respond to different types of correction and reinforcement, and I've seen firsthand how trust builds or breaks. My own household, 4 rescues, ranging from a high-energy terrier mix to a senior shepherd with mobility issues, has taught me that training tools are only as good as the relationship they preserve. This comparison breaks down how shock, vibration, and spray collars actually work, who they're right for, and which one matches your dog's temperament and your training goals. Let me start with a quick overview. Shock collars deliver electric stimulation through contact points on your dog's neck. They're best for experienced handlers working with stubborn, high-drive working dogs in controlled environments. Definitely not for first-time owners. The stress level is high because they can cause fear, anxiety, and defensive aggression if misused. They require precise timing and handler skill. Training effectiveness is high for immediate behavior interruption when used by professionals, but low for average owners due to common misuse and timing errors. Safety concerns include skin irritation from contact points, psychological trauma, potential for aggressive behavior development, and cardiovascular stress in senior dogs. Vibration collars use physical vibration, similar to a cell phone buzz against the skin. They're best for hearing-impaired dogs, general obedience training, and recall work for most adult dogs with normal anxiety levels. Stress level is low to moderate. Some dogs find vibration mildly startling but not painful, and it rarely causes fear responses. Training effectiveness is moderate to high for recall and obedience when paired with positive reinforcement, and they're excellent for deaf dogs. Safety concerns are minimal, maybe occasional skin sensitivity in dogs with very short coats, but they're not painful. Spray collars release citronella or unscented air spray near the dog's nose or face. They're best for bark control in noise-sensitive situations, anxious dogs who startle easily, puppies 6 months and older, and yes, some models even work for cats. Stress level is low. The spray is unpleasant but not painful, and dogs generally show avoidance behavior rather than fear. Training effectiveness is moderate for bark control and boundary training, but less effective for off-leash recall or distance work. Safety concerns include refill costs, potential respiratory irritation in brachiocephalic breeds like bulldogs and pugs, and you'll need canister replacement regularly. Now, let's talk about how shock collars actually work and when they fail. Models like the Educator e-collar remote dog training collar, check the link below to see the current price, and similar shock collar models deliver static correction through 2 metal contact points that press against your dog's neck. The stimulation levels typically range from 1 to 100 or more, with lower levels creating a tingling sensation and higher levels producing a sharp, painful shock. Here's what nobody tells you. Timing is everything, and most pet parents get it wrong. The correction needs to happen within half a second of the unwanted behavior for your dog to make the connection. Miss that window by even a second, and your dog has no idea what they're being corrected for. They just know something painful happened while they were near you, or looking at another dog, or sniffing that interesting smell. I've groomed dogs who came in wearing shock collars set way too high because their owners thought, he's not responding, so I need to turn it up. Those dogs showed classic fear responses: tucked tails, lowered heads, stress panting. One border collie mix I worked with for 2 years developed such anxiety around his collar that he'd shake when his owner reached for it, even though it wasn't turned on. The real problem with calling these the best shock collar for dogs is they're only effective when used by someone who understands canine body language, has impeccable timing, and pairs corrections with positive reinforcement. That's not most pet parents, and there's no shame in that. Professional trainers who use these tools successfully also use treats, praise, and relationship building. They don't rely on shock alone. The veterinary behaviorist community has serious concerns. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior recommends avoiding electronic shock collars entirely in favor of positive reinforcement methods, citing research showing increased stress markers and potential for aggression. When might shock collars be appropriate? Working dogs in field training, like hunting retrievers or herding dogs on livestock. Dogs with life-threatening behaviors like running into traffic, where immediate interruption is critical and only under direct supervision of a certified professional trainer. Even then, modern trainers increasingly prefer vibration and sound markers instead. Moving on to how vibration collars provide gentler communication. The Garmin Sport Pro Bundle Dog Training System, check the link below to see the current price, uses vibration instead of shock, and the difference in how dogs respond is night and day from my experience. The collar creates a buzzing sensation similar to your phone vibrating in your pocket. It's attention-getting without being painful. I started recommending vibration collars to clients after watching my own deaf terrier mix learn recall with one. The key advantage is these work as a bridge between your command and your dog's attention, especially at distances where verbal cues or hand signals aren't effective. They're also fantastic for dogs who are deaf or losing their hearing, something I see more often in my senior grooming clients. The training process works differently than shock collars. You're not correcting bad behavior, you're creating a communication channel. First, you condition the dog to associate the vibration with something positive, a treat, playtime, affection. Once that connection is solid, the vibration becomes a look at me signal that redirects attention back to you. Then you can give your actual command. Most vibration collars offer multiple intensity levels, usually 5 to 10 settings, which matters more than you'd think. My high-energy rescue needs a stronger vibration to notice it when he's in prey drive mode chasing squirrels. My senior shepherd responds to the lowest setting because she's more attuned to subtle cues. Being able to customize that makes a real difference in effectiveness. The honest downside? Some dogs barely notice vibration or find it amusing rather than redirecting. I've worked with a few labs and golden retrievers who seemed to think the buzzing was just part of the fun when they were running off-leash. For those dogs, vibration alone wasn't enough to build reliable recall. We needed to go back to long-line training and higher value treats. Vibration collars also require you to be consistent with the conditioning phase, which takes 2 to 3 weeks of daily practice. If you skip that foundation and just start buzzing your dog when they misbehave, you'll confuse them and the tool won't work. This isn't a quick fix, it's a training aid that requires actual training. Now let's discuss how spray collars use scent aversion. Spray collars release a burst of citronella-scented or unscented spray when triggered, either by barking in automatic bark collars or by remote control. The PetSafe Remote Spray Trainer, check the link below to see the current price, is one of the remote-controlled models I've seen work well for bark interruption and boundary training. Dogs hate the spray, but not because it hurts. It startles them and smells unpleasant. Citronella is particularly effective because dogs' sense of smell is 10,000 to 100,000 times more sensitive than ours, so what seems like a mild lemon scent to us is overwhelming to them. I've recommended spray collars specifically for nighttime barking issues because they work without you needing to be present. The collar detects barking vibrations and automatically sprays, creating an immediate consequence. This is especially helpful for dogs who bark at sounds outside when you're asleep or not home.
The effectiveness really depends on your dog's motivation. For alert barking or attention-seeking barking, spray collars work great. My clients report 60 to 80% reduction in barking within the first week. But for anxiety-based barking or separation distress, the spray can actually increase stress without addressing the underlying problem. That's when you need behavioral modification work, not just a collar. Practical considerations. Refill canisters cost around $8 to $12 and last anywhere from 30 to 40 sprays depending on the model. If you've got a persistent barker, you'll go through refills quickly. Some collars also have a design flaw where the spray nozzle clogs if you don't use it regularly. I've had 3 different clients mention this with automatic bark models. You need to test spray it every few days to keep the mechanism clear. Spray collars won't work for distance recall training the way vibration or shock collars can. The spray only releases directly at the dog's face, so you can't use it to call them back from across a park. They're situation-specific tools for close-range behavior interruption. One thing I really appreciate is spray collars are safe for puppies starting around 6 to 8 months old, once they're physically mature enough to wear a collar comfortably. Shock collars should never be used on puppies under 6 months, and I'd personally wait even longer. Let me break down effectiveness for different training scenarios. For recall and off-leash reliability, vibration collars win here, hands down. They give you a way to get your dog's attention at 100+ yards when they can't hear you calling. Pair the vibration with high-value treats when they return, and you're building both the mechanical response and the positive association. Shock collars can work for this in experienced hands, but the risk of creating fear around coming back to you is too high for most pet parents. For bark control, spray collars are most effective for nuisance barking, especially automatic models that trigger on bark vibrations. They don't require perfect timing from you, and they work whether you're home or not. Shock collars technically work for bark control, but can create anxious, shut-down dogs who are afraid to vocalize at all, even appropriate alert barking. For boundary training and property containment, this is where shock collars have traditionally dominated, invisible fence systems and such, but modern GPS-based vibration systems are catching up. The boundary wire triggers a warning beep, then vibration, then shock if the dog continues forward. I've seen these work well for large properties, but they require extensive training and aren't suitable for anxious or fearful dogs who might panic when corrected near the boundary.
For reactivity and aggression, none of these collars are appropriate primary tools without professional behavioral intervention. I've seen too many cases where shock collars increased defensive aggression because the dog associated the pain with the trigger, other dogs, strangers, rather than their own behavior. Work with a certified dog behaviorist first, then potentially incorporate training collars as part of a comprehensive plan. For multi-dog households, I live with 4 dogs, and I can tell you that training collar work gets complicated when you've got multiple dogs learning at different paces. Vibration collars work best here because you can use unique vibration patterns for each dog, and there's no risk of one dog getting corrected for another dog's behavior. So, who should choose shock collars? You're an experienced dog handler working with high-drive sporting or working breeds who need immediate, reliable off-leash control in challenging environments. You've already worked with a professional trainer on these tools and understand precise timing, stimulus levels, and how to pair corrections with rewards. You might also be dealing with a specific dangerous behavior, like running into traffic, chasing livestock, or aggressive lunging, where immediate interruption could prevent injury or death, and you're working under direct supervision of a certified behaviorist. Even then, modern trainers often achieve the same results with vibration or ultrasonic interrupters. Don't choose shock collars if you're a first-time dog owner, you're working with a fearful or anxious dog, your dog is under 12 months old, you have a senior dog with health conditions, or you're hoping the collar will fix behavior problems without doing actual training work. For most pet parents reading this, shock collars aren't the best shock collar for dogs, they're just the riskiest. Who should choose vibration or spray collars? Vibration collars are your best bet if you want off-leash reliability for hiking, camping, or beach outings with a dog who has normal confidence levels. They're also essential for deaf dogs or dogs losing their hearing, which includes a lot of senior dogs I groom. You're comfortable with a 2 to 3 week conditioning period before the collar becomes effective, and you're willing to pair it with positive reinforcement training. You want a communication tool, not a punishment device. Spray collars make sense when your primary issue is nuisance barking, especially at night or when you're not home. You've got a dog who startles at new stimuli but isn't severely anxious, and you want an automatic consequence that doesn't require you to press the button at the exact right moment. They're also good for dogs who are collar savvy and shut down with any kind of physical correction, since spray is less direct.
Choose spray over vibration for brachycephalic breeds, bulldogs, pugs, Boston Terriers, who might have tracheal sensitivity. The spray collar sits higher on the neck and doesn't require tight contact the way vibration collars do. Both vibration and spray collars work well when you're using them as part of a bigger training picture that includes treats, regular practice sessions, and relationship-building activities like grooming and play. Let me answer some common questions. Are shock collars illegal or banned in any areas? Shock collars are currently legal throughout the United States, but several countries, including Wales, Scotland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, and parts of Australia have banned or heavily restricted their use due to animal welfare concerns. Some U.S. jurisdictions are considering restrictions, and professional veterinary organizations like the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior recommend against their use except in specific circumstances under professional guidance. How long should my dog wear a training collar each day? Most manufacturers recommend limiting collar wear to 12 hours maximum per day to prevent skin irritation from the contact points, and you should remove the collar anytime you're not actively training or supervising your dog. I've seen pressure sores develop on dogs whose owners left training collars on 24/7. The contact points create localized pressure that can damage skin tissue. Rotate the collar position slightly every few hours if your dog needs to wear it for extended periods, and check daily for any signs of redness, hair loss, or skin irritation. Can I use a training collar on a puppy under 6 months old? No. Puppies under 6 months are still in critical developmental stages where positive reinforcement and relationship building should be your only training methods. Their necks are also too small for safe collar fit, and their psychological development is vulnerable to creating fear associations that last a lifetime. Start with basic obedience, using treats, toys, and praise, and wait until your puppy is at least 6 to 8 months old, and preferably older, before considering any type of correction-based training collar. Even then, vibration or spray collars are much safer choices than shock collars for young dogs. After nearly a decade of watching how dogs respond to different handling approaches, I can tell you the best shock collar for dogs usually isn't a shock collar at all. It's a vibration collar paired with solid foundational training and consistent positive reinforcement. Shock collars have their place in working dog training and specific behavioral interventions under professional guidance, but they're not the right choice for most pet parents trying to improve recall or stop barking. The relationship cost is too high, and the margin for error is too narrow. My 4 rescues have taught me that trust takes years to build and seconds to break. Every time you interact with your dog, whether that's a training session, a grooming appointment, or just a walk around the block, you're either depositing into or withdrawing from that trust account. Choose training tools that make deposits. For my money and my dog's, that's vibration for recall work and spray for bark control, both backed up by treats, patience, and the understanding that good training is about communication, not punishment. That's it for this episode of Total Pet Parent Podcast. Thank you for listening. New episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you've always got something coming up. If this episode helped you out, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. It sounds small, but that's genuinely how other dog owners find the show when they're searching for answers. And hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the second a new episode goes live. I'll talk to you soon.